Good afternoon and welcome to the meeting of the 2021 Johnson County Charter Commission. I'm Greg Musil. I'm the chairman of the commission. And we are here for another meeting at which we're going to hear some first readings and second readings of proposals for amendments to the Johnson County Home Rule Charter. First item is to call the roll. Deputy Clerk Sater, would you please do so?
Wendy Bingezer. Thank you. Mike Bain.
Mike Bain here.
Thank you. Karen Brownlee.
Karen Brownlee here.
Thank you. Vicki Charlesworth.
Vicki Charlesworth present.
Thank you. Jim Denning. Thank you. Jane Dirks.
Jane Dirks here.
Thank you. Jimmy Gayona. Jimmy Gayona is present. Tedrick House. Thank you. Randy Hutchins. Thank you. Chris Iliff.
Yeah, Cliff Iliff here.
Thank you. Laura Klingen-Smith.
Laura Klingen-Smith present.
Thank you. Joy Costin.
Joy Costin present.
Thank you. Brent McCune. Thank you. Eric Michelson.
Eric Michelson present.
Thank you. Ed Peterson. Thank you. Don Rattan.
Dawn Rattan is present.
Thank you. Leslie Riverola. Leslie Riverola.
She is not currently present on Zoom.
Thank you. So she is absent at this time. Don Roberts.
Don Roberts present.
Thank you. Kyle Russell.
Kyle Russell present.
Thank you. Paula Swaw. Thank you. Brenda Sharp.
Brenda Sharp present.
Thank you. Greg Shelton.
Greg Shelton present.
Thank you. Greg Smith. Thank you. Zach Thomas. Zach Thomas is on his way. I'll note when he comes into the meeting. And Chair Musel.
Present.
Thank you. We have, let's see, 23-2 at this time.
So with 23 members present, we do have a quorum. The next item would be to consider the approval of the December 6th, 2021 agenda, which is our agenda for today. Are there any additions or changes or questions about today's agenda? If not, I would accept a motion to approve. Motion by Commissioner Peterson and second by Commissioner McCune. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries and today's agenda is approved as published. The second item is consideration of the November 17th, 2021 minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes that were posted with the agenda? Not, I would accept a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner McCune, seconded by Commissioner Bingezer. Or close. It's getting worse as we go along. Commissioner Wendy seconded it. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries and the November 17th, 2021 minutes are approved as published. I have no old business on the agenda for today. New business, one thing I want to talk about before we get into the continuing the first readings of proposed amendments. I'll recite again for members of the public the rules that we adopted back in May or June for proposed amendments to the Home Rule Charter. This body can place an item on the agenda or on the ballot for next November with a vote of 13 members of the commission. We forward it to the Board of County Commissioners, but the Board of County Commissioners with 13 votes of this commission must put it on the ballot next November. We established a process whereby proposed amendments would be submitted. The commission would have a first reading, and with 9 votes out of 25, the item would move on to a second reading for further discussion, and then ultimately a vote. And the first reading would take place one meeting. The second reading would be a subsequent meeting, and the vote would actually be a subsequent meeting to that. With that schedule, just to alert everybody, anything that is advanced, we only have one meeting left for the calendar year. Do we have two meetings? Okay, we have a meeting on December 13th and on December 22nd. Okay, so anything that advances tonight from first reading to second reading, there would be a potential for us to get through all of the votes in the calendar year 2021. However, the next item on the agenda might affect that. We have a couple of items, at least, I don't know if it's several, that have been requested by members of the commission and require some legal opinions. As we've talked about, Ms. Dunham has been giving us guidance, but she isn't the attorney for the county, not the attorney for this commission. So there are at least a couple things I know I believe, and I think you would agree that we need to get outside counsel on. One is Commissioner Hutchins' proposal for a trustee to be elected in the unincorporated part of the county with certain powers over budget and budget decisions. The second one would be Mayor Michelson's suggestion of a 5-year term for the chair, such that the chair would become on an odd year election cycle. Ms. Dunham has pointed out that both the Constitution and statutes refer to even numbered years for county elections. And so I think it's worth it to get an outside opinion on that. There may be other things that come up, including if we put something on the ballot, having a law firm to assist us in drafting the actual budget or ballot language. I had reached out within the executive committee about ideas, and I had contacted the Fulton-Siefken firm who does municipal governmental law around the state and was going to recommend them tonight. I know Mr. Hutchins told me before the meeting that he has reached out to an attorney who has done work for him that he would like to have retained for his amendment. I told Randy, I think this is a commission attorney. This isn't an individual attorney for an individual member on their individual amendment. And just so it's clear, everybody here has the right to engage their own attorney. The question is an attorney engaged by and giving advice to the Charter Commission as its client? So I want to get this out of the way, hopefully quickly, but my recommendation, and I think the recommendation of the executive committee, is that we recommend to the group Fulton-Siefken and specifically Tony Rupp to be the supervising attorney. But I want Randy to have an opportunity to respond to that, and anybody else if they have a question about that. We have different microphones here than we have at the county, so please use a microphone if you're going to speak. Go ahead, Randy.
Randy Hutchins. The issue of the trustee going against state statute has been arisen and brought to my attention. From that, I've reached out to Blaine Finch, who's also in the House of Representatives. Blaine's agreed to represent myself through this process. I think it really boils down to the question, am I going to have to fund this out of my own pocket, or is a commission? I don't have an issue with the commission having an attorney, but Blaine's very well versed in, as you guys know, not only in state, but also city charter rules as well as county rules as well. So I think Blaine would be perfectly positioned to help me with this amendment.
Any other comments from anyone as we address this issue? I've stated some of my concerns. The Charter Commission has the right as a commission to expend county taxpayer funds, including for engaging an attorney to represent the commission. I'm uncomfortable with any individual member of the commission on their own amendment hiring or requesting an attorney to be paid for by the rest of the commission. I'm also a little concerned about whether if Mr. Finch has represented you before, Randy, as you mentioned, there then is a conflict with him representing the commission as a separate client. I'm not saying there is, but it raises questions. So my preference is that we authorize the executive committee to engage counsel, qualified counsel for the commission to look at any statutory issues, and if something is placed on the ballot, to then draft the ballot language. Commissioner Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So would Randy have access to visit with the council that you're referencing?
Absolutely. And if Randy wants to hire Blaine or anybody else to communicate with that attorney, I think the more input that attorney has, the better, but I think they need to be an independent counsel to this commission and not beholden to any individual commissioner. So,
I guess the question is, am I footing that expense out of my own pocket?
I think that's right. I think the question is, if taxpayer funds are involved, I think it has to be an attorney for the commission, selected by the commission. That's how I thought we were looking at this from the start, but I want to make sure the commission is comfortable with that.
Well, just to be clear, the amendment was put forth, the amendment was voted on and passed to the next round. So now, as you pointed out, now becomes the due diligence of putting together something that's very concrete that we can put on the ballot to be voted on by the members. And if voted, can be implemented and be fairly represented. So this isn't going to happen with one conversation. It's not going to happen in one day, one meeting. This is something that we're going to have to spend some due diligence to make sure we get right. So that's where I'm fine if the commission wants to have an attorney, third-party attorney to represent the commission. But at the same time, I don't want to be naive to think that I, Randy Hutchins, I'm going to have all the answers to put and have the thoughtful process of meeting not only the local charter, but also the state statutes for that. So I know I'm going to need some help.
And I don't disagree with that, Randy. I understand that. I think the help you should receive is from the Charter Commission's attorney, who represents the commission as a whole and will take input from any commissioner that wants to give input on that. The goal of that individual would be to determine whether your proposal, as articulated thus far, is consistent with state statutes or require a statutory change.
And I'm fine with that. I guess, again, I'm going to need help that goes well beyond that. So I don't have a problem. I think that's a great step forward, right? But there's a lot of work that's got to be done in the background in order to bring it to that commission attorney to make sure, yes, he agrees that with my counsel that everything was going to pass all the different tests that got to be passed in order to have something that's legal to put on the ballot.
Yeah, I think that the details, the specificity of the proposal has to come from you as a proposer of the amendment. And then the lawyer for the commission has to determine whether or not that is workable within Kansas statutes or require a statutory change.
And I agree with that, but I'm going to need counsel to afford me the opportunity to bring that to our attorney.
Well, I don't think the taxpayers of the county are obligated to fund individual members' attorneys for their individual amendments.
And that what this whole process is about? What are we doing here then? I mean, we put forth an amendment. We've got identified an issue in the county. We're going through this process of which we do it every 10 years. We got 25 people dedicated hours upon hours on this. I've dedicated more of my time, and now you're telling me you're not going to afford me the opportunity on a past amendment to help bring it all together and put it in a format that can be put on the ballot for the public to vote on?
I'll make it clear, it passed first reading.
Exactly. So that's where I've got to put together something for the final vote of which can be put on the ballot.
And you will have the opportunity to do that through the Charter Commission's attorney. If the attorney renders an opinion that it is statutorily okay to do that, then you can structure your amendment. If the attorney renders an opinion that says it's not within the statutes to do that, you'll have an opportunity to talk to that person and say, can I change it some way to make it within the statutes? My problem is if we have something that is violating statute, then we cannot put it on the agenda, on the ballot.
I 100% agree with that. But I guess you have to give me the opportunity to bring something forth that's going to pass the litmus test.
Well,
Chair,
somebody had their hand up over here.
Chair, yeah, Jimmy Gaona. I guess I'm trying to understand here both sides of this coin. But what I'm hearing is it's more about getting it prepared enough to present it to the lawyer. But I think we need to flip that and look at going to the lawyer and say, is this a possible? Yes, then how is it possible? Then that's what the lawyer would do, help for the commission lawyer, and then you would present it for the final vote, is what I'm hearing here. Versus, I don't think you have to have it all, you don't have to have the car all made yet. You just gotta know, can you make the car? And so in essence, let's take the first step, and if the commissioner so moves to get counsel, then ask that person, how does this process look? I think, I understand you want to bring a strong discussion to have them vet, but there's no conversation to have if he or she says it can't happen. That's what I'm trying to, I think we need to get to that point first.
So the sequence, the possible sequence could be then that we engage our own counsel for the commission, get an opinion on that from the attorney for that. And then look at, is it fixable if it's a problem? And at that point, cross the bridge of whether or not an individual member can engage their own counsel at the commission's expense.
I'm just uncomfortable with the process. I just don't want the deck stacked against me. I've got an attorney that's knows the state laws inside and out. At the county level, he serves as an attorney for a city. So this individual, I don't know who could be more qualified than Blaine Finch in this law firm. So I trust Blaine, all right? I like to assume positive intent, but quite frankly, I'm not going to do so in this case, right? So if you all want to have another attorney, I'm fine with that. If you want to challenge Blaine's assessment, then I'm okay with that, right? Because nobody's perfect. But at the same time, I don't know the individual. I don't know who his alliances are. I don't know if he's an attorney for Ed Eilert. I don't know how he served in other governments. I don't know this individual, but I do know Blaine, and I know Blaine will be very fair and make sure that my best interest is served in putting forth the best amendment possible.
And frankly, that's why he can't serve as commission's attorney, because he is hired to put forth the best amendment you can put forward. And that's your right and your advocacy, but that's not the commission's role. That's my problem with us hiring an attorney for you who will be an advocate for you, as opposed to an advocate for the commission and its interpretation of state law and the county charter.
So I guess it goes back to my original, again, you want that if the charter commission wants to have an outside attorney, that's fine. I guess it goes back to the question, are you going to afford me the opportunity to get the funding for my attorney that's going to work on this amendment that's obviously directly for the charter commission? It isn't for Randy Hutchins. It's for the charter commission.
That's up to the commission. My recommendation would be a motion at this stage to authorize the executive committee to hire counsel to evaluate this question and other legal questions as to whether a proposed amendment can be done legally. If we get that recommendation and there's a next step to hire a second attorney to review that, whether it's Blaine or somebody else, we can take that step. I would not recommend we take that step now because we have 6 or 7 other items on second reading that could all be requesting to have an opinion as to the validity of those proposals, and place those in an advocate position that would put this commission in a spot I don't think we want to be in, that would require more taxpayer money. That's my individual position. So it's up to the commission, but my recommendation would be to authorize the executive committee tonight to engage counsel to review that question and at least the fifth year term question with respect to odd year elections. And
So
we need to
how-
do that.
how-
We need to do that quickly.
So how does that get presented to the attorney?
You'll have a chance to present it. I'll sit down with you and him and present it, and Blaine can be there. Commissioner Bain.
if I could make a statement at this time, we have Leslie Riveriola that came in at 4:11 PM. And we have Zach Thomas that came in at 4:14 PM. So therefore we have all 25 members present at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
I'll be honest with you, I don't remember if I voted yes or no on this in the first opportunity to vote. I don't find in the minutes on this particular item that we have a tally like we do on some of the other ones, so, but it doesn't matter. My general thought is, as I was looking at first readings, I was determining yes, no, or maybe, and maybe in most cases, I went ahead and voted yes to learn more information. I don't think when I was doing that, I was looking at to the lens of, is this gonna cost money and have additional expenses to this commission to hire outside attorneys to help formulate ideas? I think we need to establish, and I'm not sure how you came up with the name you did, executive committee or whatever. So one question, why them? And I think we need some justification rather than the fact that you just, the three of you decided that. So let's talk about that a little bit, but not at this moment. Two, I don't think it's prudent for us to be funding everybody's position because frankly, that turns into 25 attorneys' opinions potentially, rather than just one who's the proposer of the amendment. And I think that runs this out of control and takes us forever. We need a law firm representing us on any issue that comes forward, and they can help design language but I mean, I think tonight we probably need a vote tonight to determine whether we want to authorize funds to be expended by individuals versus one for the group. Let the group decide that. I would vote no personally, but I don't, Greg, I appreciate your position. It's a tough one to be in the executive committee, but I don't want it to be just a unilateral decision of the committee tonight that you're saying no to Randy and yes to someone that we haven't vetted without a consensus of the group. And if the group wants to spend funds for individual attorneys on whatever issue and position it is along the way, we get a majority, we go down that path. We don't have a majority, we stop and we go find the body that or the firm that represents us on all legal questions moving forward. I don't think they're going to be in a position to necessarily recommend Randy's proposal or not, or any proposal, but their first look needs to be, is it compliant with state law and is there a way to do it with existing state law? If there is, we can tailor that language at that point. If there's not, it can go in a recommendation that then the county commission can go look at changing state statutes to accommodate that for a next round, but not during this round.
Other
Mr. Chairman, Chris Freilich.
Oh,
I'm going to make a motion that we hire the counsel that you have recommended to us from Fulton Siefken. And I would also note that it's 4:25 and we have a full agenda. This item wasn't on the agenda. And so I'm going to move, that would be my motion, that we hire the attorney that you have recommended from Fulton Siefken.
It's been moved and seconded to seek to engage Fulton Siefken. Let me tell you about Tony Rupp and Fulton Siefken. Tony Rupp has practiced law in Johnson County for over 30 years. Over 10 years ago, he was a partner of mine. That's why I know what quality he is. They represent municipal bodies on occasion around here, usually on human resources issues. It is the largest firm in Kansas. They have offered us discounted rates if we want an engagement with them. And I know that they can do the work and they can do it timely. There are dozens of attorneys in this county that could do this work. I, in the executive committee, attempted to find somebody that we thought could do it quickly and that was qualified. So that's the reason for that. Other discussion? Anybody on Zoom?
Mr. Chairman?
Mayor?
Yeah, I presume you have already, and if not, would request that you and the executive committee and perhaps sharing the results with the commission ask Mr. Rupp and the firm to disclose specifically any and all representations of the county or any individuals on the Charter Commission, either currently or in recent history, even if it's not a legal conflict, just so we have some sunlight on that and can get comfortable that it's it's going to be an independent legal review, as I'm sure it probably will be?
I did not ask about every individual member of the Charter Commission. We can certainly do that. I asked about governmental representation, which I know about because I know they've represented the city of Olathe in litigation and land use litigation. I know that they have represented the county several years ago in human resources matters. They have not represented the county in anything other than a human resources scenario. So I'd be happy to have them run everybody on the Charter Commission to make sure they haven't represented anybody. These were preliminary discussions, but we need this if we're going to get to second reading on Randy's issue or your issue, Mayor, on the 5th-year term. We need this. We need to engage somebody quickly that can do the work quickly, or we'll be going into January.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, you talked about my conflict of interest with hiring Blaine, but yet you voted no on my amendment, and yet you're going to hire a firm in which you work for, and he was a peer to you.
No, I've never worked for Fulton Ski.
So was he part of the same law firm?
The same firm that I worked at
Okay.
10 or 11 years
I would
ago.
think that would constitute more of a conflict of interest than anything else.
I'm happy to let the entire 25 members decide this. I am not trying to manipulate this in any way. If you don't like that, I want to find a way where we can find a council that we can agree on that's qualified. Tony Rupp and his firm are that, and they've never represented me personally, Randy. Your choice has represented you personally, and that's completely different than having, and you want them to represent you on this being an advocate. And I don't like getting in a fuss with you, but I think the commission needs its own attorney that represents the commission, and that individuals can then challenge that attorney's opinion with their own attorney or otherwise. And that's where I think we have to go.
Mr. Chairman, it's been moved and seconded. I call the question.
I had a couple, let me have a couple more, Chris. I agree. We need to get on to,
It's a debatable motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry.
Calling the question isn't absolute. It's a debatable motion.
Right. So I'm going to ignore Chris for a
No,
moment.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's not over just
Right.
because he called the question.
So I'm going to give, I know that we have Commissioner Hausch and then Commissioner Peterson, and we'll give everybody on Zoom a last opportunity on this so we can hopefully move on.
This is Tedrick Couch. I think that getting, as Mayor Bain said, counsel to represent us for all the various legal issues we may think we need outside counsel for is prudent. It involves some process, so everyone's comfortable with it. So I think it'll take more than just tonight. But the fact that Cindy, as counsel for the county, did the issue spotting on the even versus odd number of years, and the fact that the county would probably be interested in what Cindy has to say about whatever of these issues we're going to find outside counsel for. I just don't want us to get off. And I mean, if Cindy's opinion is different than our counsel that we hire, I'd at least like to have the benefit of her wisdom as well. And it may well be enough on a number of these issues.
Okay. Mr. Peterson.
Question was raised how the executive committee reached this recommendation. We had this discussion a little over a week ago. We realized time was short. The chairman circulated a list of proposed counsel for retention. All of them were deemed acceptable, and we just deferred to the chair to pick one of those groups. And time was one of the considerations here, given that we're working over the holiday weekend and so forth. So it was not a matter of us trying to find a particular counsel to serve a particular purpose. That was not at all considered. It was just a matter of finding acceptable, capable counsel. I think having a firm is important because we're looking for a quick turnaround. And I think having more than one attorney to throw at this may be important for them. So that's why I feel that this is an appropriate decision for us to make. And I'm certainly I'm confident in the counsel that's being recommended here.
There's someone on Zoom that would like to comment on this. Okay. If not, we will move to a vote. Let's do it by roll call.
Wendy Bingazer.
The motion, as I understand it, was to authorize the executive committee to engage the Fulton Seep Confirm as recommended. That's correct.
Wendy Bingazer.
Wendy Bengesser, yes.
Yes. Mike Bain. Yes. Karen Brownlee.
Karen Brownlee, yes.
That's a yes. Vicky Charlesworth.
Vicky Charlesworth, yes.
That's a yes. Jim Denning. That's a yes. Jane Dirks.
Jane Dirks, yes.
That's a yes. Jimmy Gayona. That's a yes. Tedrick House.
Yes.
That's a yes. Randy Hutchins.
Yes.
That's a yes. Chris Isla.
Yes.
That's a yes. Laura Klingensmith. Smith.
Yes.
That's a yes. Joy Costin.
Yes.
That's a yes. Brent McCune.
Yes.
That's a yes. Eric Michelson.
Yes.
That's a yes. Ed Peterson. That's a yes. Don Rattan.
Yes.
That's a yes. Leslie Riverola. Leslie Riverola. I think she may have dropped from Zoom. I'll come back to her. Don Roberts.
Yes.
That's a yes. Kyle Russell.
Yes.
That's a yes. Paula Swag.
Yes.
That's a yes. Brenda Sharp.
Yes.
That's a yes. Greg Shelton.
Yes.
That's a yes. Greg Smith.
Yes.
That's a yes. Zach Thomas.
Yes.
That's a yes. Chair Musel.
Yes.
That's a yes. And has Leslie Riverola. Are you back on?
Leslie is on, however, she is not unmuting.
She is not what?
Unmuted.
She is not unmuting to answer.
Okay, thank you. Chair, how would you like to proceed with that one?
Well, we have a.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Hi, I don't know what's happening with my audio. I'm a yes. Leslie Riverola, yes.
Thank you. That's a yes. We have 25-0.
Thank you. We will proceed with that. And Randy, you and I will talk and get Blaine, figure out how we can make it as easy as possible to get your input to the attorney.
Thank you.
And then we can talk later, sequencing it if there's another need to come back and see if Blaine's going to spend more time.
Very good.
Fair enough? All right, let's move on to the first readings. And I apologize for not really anticipating 2 months ago that we were going to absolutely need legal counsel. We should have probably had them on board on standby earlier. So 10 years from now, when those of you are on this commission, remember that. Nobody's laughing very much. All right, first reading. The first item, I think on the first reading, there are two proposals to change the election status of the sheriff's position to nonpartisan instead of partisan. One of them is a straight change from Commissioner Costin, and one of them is a change as part of a broader proposed amendment by Commissioner Schwak. I don't know which one of you would like to go first. I'd like to have both of you speak to it, and then we can have additional responses. We were trying to keep first readings to 20 minutes. So we'll do our best to see what we can do. Mayor, do you want to go first, or do you want to defer to Joy?
Chair, could I make sure this is read into the record?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
The item is change election status of the sheriff's position to a nonpartisan race.
Joy, are you going to go first?
Sure, I can go first. This is really pretty straightforward. If by changing the sheriff's position to a nonpartisan race, it brings it into alignment with all other county level races. It allows for open primaries, which makes the office of sheriff accountable to all voters in the county, not just those registered in one of the two parties. And just as a good sense of law enforcement, I believe law enforcement top officials should not be deemed to serve one party or another, or to be advancing any particular ideological agenda. So that's why I see this as being an important move.
Mayor Schwak.
Thank you. I have proposed a broader modification just because I think that the document, the charter itself needs to be restated to the extent we can to get rid of language which purely serves an historical purpose. So to that extent, I suggested some additional deletions and particular insertions. You have that language before you. I think I'd like to speak to the broader issue. When I came to this commission, I did so with two goals in mind. First, that county government would continue to provide quality services efficiently, professionally, and equitably, and with sincere hopes that our structural review could be done civilly without serious partisanship. The mayor who nominated me to be a commissioner was undoubtedly a Republican, but she believes, like I do, that nonpartisanship is critical to the working and getting the work done at the local level. It insulates city and county office holders from the histrionics that unfortunately plague our national politics right now. Some public commenters have indicated that if you know the party affiliation, you know what the candidate will do once in office. My own life experience in local government doesn't support that. And if we look at recent events, did knowing that Joe Manchin was a Democrat tell you that he would not support paid family leave? Or did knowing that Lynn Cheney was a Republican tell you that she would see the January 6th attack on the US Capitol as a threat to democracy? The party labels have limitations, is my point. And I think we need to move beyond those limitations to focus on what candidates say and do, because that's what really matters. One of the most recent commenters indicated that the Board of County Commissioners should not be trusted to review and approve the budget of the sheriff. My response to that is that the Charter Commission is obligated to follow state statute, and the language I've proposed comes directly out of the state statute. The same statute subjects the personnel actions of the sheriff to the personnel policies and procedures established by the Board of County Commissioners and its established pay plan and civil service system. So if the public that we've heard from were sometimes confused, we should not be. We need to follow those state statutes, and the only modification my proffered text proposes is one of consistency, that the election for sheriff be nonpartisan, just like all the other county elections. I began by talking about how I came to be a commissioner. And I came as a representative of the county mayors. Well, the county mayors aren't a class unto ourselves. This body heard from the Olathe Chamber of Commerce. It heard from the League of Women Voters. Those are two very disparate groups, but they both have large membership. The League of Women Voters is over 300 people strong, spread out throughout the county. And they all kind of pointed to the same reasons for nonpartisan elections at the local level, the county level. Here's what the Olathe Chamber of Commerce said. Nonpartisan elections are important because of elimination of party identification affords greater cooperation among office holders. It allows for greater unity among elected officials, so the focus stays on delivering critical local services. It keeps the focus on specific local issues that the voters really care about. What the Johnson County League of Women said was, nonpartisan local elections are familiar to the voters. Nonpartisan elections better reflect the growing number of independent voters, that is, those who don't identify with either of the two main parties. And finally, they said, if you put the focus on the candidate's particular positions on local issues Instead of letting candidates default to some national party plank, what you will get is a focus on local issues. Finally, they said nonpartisan elections foster collaboration, which leads to efficiency, productivity, innovation in city and county government. So for all these reasons, I ask that you seriously consider making the sheriff's position a nonpartisan position, even though elected by the people, just like the county commissioners, so that we have an inherent consistency amongst these positions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And you should have all received what I have as a red line, but I think you may have received a blue line showing the existing charter sections and the changes that Mayor Schwach has recommended. My suggestion for moving forward is that we first talk solely about whether the sheriff should be partisan or nonpartisan, and then we talk separately about the other changes in Mayor Schwach's recommendation. So we will take care of Commissioner Costin's and the first part of Commissioner Schwach's suggestions with respect to partisan, nonpartisan sheriff first, if that's okay with the commission. And remember, we're at first reading, so 9 votes are required to move this on to second reading. Discussion about this particular proposal from those in the room. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In considering moving that from a partisan race to a non-partisan race, I have strong objections to that. I've worked with candidates in nonpartisan elections, and 9 out of 10 times the first question on the door of a voter is, what party are they affiliated with? It's an important thing for voters. It gives them something to identify with. There's research out there that shows in a nonpartisan race, people are confused. They don't pay attention to nonpartisan races. They go to the ballot and it's like, I like that name better than the other one. They know nothing about the person that's running because there's no information. In Johnson County, if you look at the Board of County Commissioners, it's supposedly a nonpartisan race, but I can show you finance reports where parties have donated to candidates. If they're not interested in what that candidate does, why would that party associate with them and give them money? It just doesn't make sense. I think nonpartisan is a misnomer, and there's really no such thing as a nonpartisan race. You can call it whatever you want, but it's more confusing for people than it is helpful. On some of the issues that have come up aboard in front of the county commission, there's definitely a party line vote there. You can tell who is on what side and who's on the other. Just because you call it nonpartisan doesn't mean it's a nonpartisan situation. Politics is partisan. That's how it works.
Other commissioners in the room with comments on this proposal? If not, how about on Zoom? We'll go with Commissioner Klingensmith and then Commissioner Shelton and then Commissioner Rattan, if I can remember that order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Greg Smith. I think having a nonpartisan race makes you wonder what we need to hide if you can't come out and state your party affiliation. We live in a 2-party system, and to say that you're a Republican or a Democrat, that gives you a starting base as to whether or not you want to elect that person or not. When you go to a ballot and you've got a bunch of names, it makes it very confusing for people. And that was something that was discussed at the last meeting. So I think it's important that we leave the sheriff's department, the sheriff's race as a partisan race.
Thank you. Commissioner Shelton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, I would just say, as an appointee of one of the political parties on this commission, I think it's really important that we don't conflate the purpose of a political party with the purpose of political candidates. Those aren't always hand in glove. So when it comes to, I agree with Mayor Schwach, when it comes to these local elections, having just run for local office, I will say that I got that question that Commissioner Smith mentioned. but it was more like 4 out of 10 times or 5 out of 10 times. So I guess it really kind of anecdotally depends on where you live and how often you get asked that question. I don't think we should factor that into this decision, and instead keep it pragmatic and look at what it is we're trying to accomplish with our chief law enforcement officer. And to me, as I've come to know some of our local law enforcement better, it's very clear to me that they're not focused on partisan politics. They're focused on keeping our communities safe and healthy. And I think moving this to nonpartisan will help them do that even better in the future. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Rattan.
I'd like to say that our elected officials serve everyone. They're not certain party. And so I like the idea of it being nonpartisan. Also, I think that as voters, we need to go and do the work as voters and as candidates, we need to do the work to vet these candidates. And we also, as candidates, need to do the work to have people support us on both sides of the aisle, as whether it's Democrat, Republican, or independent. So I don't think that putting a letter behind someone's name is the way to go to be an informed voter or a hardworking candidate.
I see no other hands raised on the Zoom. Is there any
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris.
I have
Commissioner Island.
do have a question. By making it a partisan or keeping it partisan, does that mean that it's subject to primaries?
Yes, it would be subject to a Republican primary.
Yeah.
If there's more than one Republican filing.
I mean, I'm a member of a particular party, and I am a member of that party so that I can vote for the best person in that party who usually wins countywide if they make it through the primary. Personally, I would rather not do that. I agree with almost everything that Mayor Schwach has said. And I think that sheriff is a position that absolutely shouldn't be beholden to or related to any party at all.
Okay. Commissioner Dirks is on Zoom, and then Commissioner Peterson. Jane, would you unmute Jane?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Don't be sorry, we're going to do this the rest of our lives.
I agree with Commissioner Smith. And again, just like he said, when I was campaigning, I noticed that that's the issue that comes up, that people want to know where you stand. Also, when you look at how the two parties, they have different styles of what they think of how they should be involved in governing. And so that's why I think it's important as you look across the United States, how the sheriffs have handled issues with riots and whatever. It's obvious that there's different styles. And I think that's, if you look at the party, how they plan to handle it, it's usually reflected in that. So that's why I think it's important to keep it as partisan.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson.
I don't, one difference in partisan versus nonpartisan occurs if there needs to be a replacement in midterm. Under nonpartisan, the charter would need to address that. Under a partisan system, it's precinct committee people, a relatively small group of citizens who make the decision on the replacement. And it has happened in our recent history as to the sheriff. So there is a significant difference in the case of having to replace a partisan elected official.
That's an excellent point, Ed, that if we do adopt a ballot amendment to put it to nonpartisan, we will need to look at the system for selecting a replacement, unless we get to Commissioner Smith's amendment, which would require a special election for any elected position that is vacant more than 90 days before an election. Oh, they said there'd be no math. But so that's a good point. Any other comments on this proposal, Mayor Boehm?
I think you've heard it before and you'll hear it again. I came into this with the idea that change wasn't necessary. We're functioning just fine. To Commissioner Peterson's point, I understand if it goes nonpartisan, we have to have a process created, more than likely the process will be fewer people in the room making the appointment than the partisan plan now, which is county representation from either party across the county. Unless you want to pull that number of people together in the process of appointing someone that's not partisan, you're gonna have less voices in the room than more.
Last chance for anybody on Zoom, and Commissioner Brownlee, and those of you on Zoom, this is your last chance after Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would take issue with the comments that just because you affiliate with the party, that you're beholden to the party. Rather, you're choosing to communicate some of your core principles by that affiliation. And I think it's been very clear in our national politics in the last 15 to 18 months that those issues associated with a safe and orderly culture tend to be affiliated with a certain party. And, you know, those ideas of defunding the police, those tend to be associated with a certain party. And I think the issues can be thoroughly debated, certainly in a partisan election. So I really think the public prefers to know which party someone has chosen to affiliate with. It doesn't remove that candidate's ability to voice for themselves where they're at, but it certainly does reflect some core principles.
Any other? Oh, Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Having recently run a race in this regard, I find it comical that those offended by a nonpartisan race say that it clouds, or that nonpartisan race clouds the voters and their intellect to discern which candidate they like best. My simple involvement in a particular party painted broad strokes images of me that were clearly untrue and had absolutely nothing based upon my history or political affiliation. As a personal testament here, the partisan election for a law enforcement position really has no basis. If the voters want to know who's who, listen to the issues, ask the individuals. To hide behind a R or a D is simply that, is hiding, and I'll leave it at that.
Chairman?
Mayor Michelson.
Thank you. I want to second Mayor Schwach's comments from the beginning and add my own personal experience. I've not been a state elected official and I've not been a federal elected official, but I can tell you that as a local elected official, it's a constant challenge to defend against what I would suggest are some bad examples from higher levels of government that I think flow from partisan elections. Now, there are some benefits to partisan elections, but two of the detriments, in my view, are this toxic rhetoric that we are subjected to, and the sort of the calcification of voting blocks on different issues. And one of the things that's really special about local government, in my experience, is that we have much less of that. My first few years of council, when I was on the city council, I didn't even know whether everybody was an R or a D, and I didn't care. And we would have split voting blocks, but they wouldn't always be these people on that side and those people on that side. Depending on the issue, it would be a fluid group voting on different things, because potholes, public health, those often don't and often shouldn't have partisan positions, and so I think this is something unique about local government. I think it's something good about local government. And the bottom line is, I think it results in better governance, and it's worth protecting. And by that, I mean nonpartisan elections, and more importantly, but that's a part of it, is a nonpartisan approach to local government.
Commissioner Housh.
I think the county's working well, and as I understand it, the sheriff's currently a partisan election, so is the DA, as I understand it. And that's by state statute.
Correct.
Something that we couldn't touch. So I think about law enforcement and think about these two positions and some of the comments we heard from the public over the course of our deliberations, where people are really looking to the sheriff and his position as one I think they viewed as an expression of their partisan beliefs. And so I don't necessarily ascribe those feelings to the other questions we're going to have before us on nonpartisan, partisan. But for me, I feel as though I don't see a need to change this on the sheriff right now.
Anybody else in the room? I don't see any hands. Anybody else on Zoom? Last call. I'll make my own comments. I came into this. We're 20 years into a home rule charter that was adopted that established the sheriff as a partisan position, that established the other county commissioners as a nonpartisan position. I believe that I think I've said this before. I consider this kind of a mini constitutional convention. I frankly don't think it should be held every 10 years, but that's not our choice. It takes a compelling reason to me to change the format of the home rule charter every 10 years. I see no compelling reason to change this. And I will also find no compelling reason to support, Greg, your future amendment, which would make everything partisan. The inconsistency is there. I don't think it has been politically damaging, and I don't see the need to make that change at this time. So I will vote against this proposal. Absent other comments, Ms. Sater, please call the roll, and then we will take it after you vote. If you'd like, you can take. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Mr. Chairman.
So,
just a
Commissioner
point of
Smith.
order. What exactly, which amendment are we voting on?
I consider we're voting on Joy Costin's clean amendment to simply change it from partisan to nonpartisan. And then we'll get back to the substance of the rest of the amendment proposed by Mayor Schwab.
All right,
So
thank
this
you.
would only be on that issue. Thank you for clarifying that.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Russell.
has anyone moved to pass the amendment on
Oh,
first?
that's right.
If not, I'll do so.
Okay. Thank you, Kyle. Parliamentarian, you're the new parliamentarian. Moved by Kyle Russell to move to second reading the proposal that the sheriff be elected as a nonpartisan basis instead of a partisan basis. Is there a second? Mayor Schwab seconds. Thank you, Kyle. Call the roll, please.
Wendy Bangesser.
Wendy Bangesser, no.
That's a no. Mike Bain.
Mike Bang, no.
That's a no. Karen Brownlee.
Brownlee, no.
That's a no. Vicky Charlesworth.
Yes. Vicky Charlesworth, yes.
That's a yes. Jim Denning.
Denning is no.
That's a no. Jane Dirks.
Jane Dirks, no.
That's a no. Jimmy Gaona. That's a yes. Tedrick Housh.
No.
That's a no. Randy Hutchins.
No.
That's a no. Chris Iliff.
Yes.
That's a yes. Laura Klingensmith.
No.
That's a no. Joy Costin.
Joy Costin, yes.
That's a yes. Brent McCune.
No.
That's a no. Eric Michelson.
Yes.
That's a yes. Ed Peterson.
Ed Peterson, yes.
That's a yes. Don Rattan. Don Rattan.
Yes. Yes.
That's a yes. Leslie Riverola. Leslie?
Okay, Leslie Riverola is a no.
That's a no. Don Roberts?
Don Roberts, no.
That's a no. Kyle Russell?
Kyle Russell, yes.
That's a yes. Paula Swag? That's a yes. Brenda Sharp. Brenda Sharp, can you unmute? I will try to come back to Brenda. Greg Shelton,
Greg Shelton, yes.
that's a yes. Greg Smith,
No.
that's a no. Zach Thomas,
Zach Thomas, yes.
that's a yes. Chair Musel,
No.
that's a no. Brenda Sharp, can you vote now?
Yes, sorry about that. Brenda Sharp, yes.
That's a yes. Chair, I have 12 yeses and 13 nos. It moves on to a second reading.
That's consistent with my count. Let's take a no more than a 5-minute break and be back here. And with some indulgence, we may go a little past 6 if we need to. Live at the Charter Commission meeting after a short break. It is 5:11. I have conferred with Mayor Schwach, on whose amendment we were discussing after the partisan, nonpartisan vote, and along with Commissioner Smith. And I think we'll move now to the first reading of Commissioner Smith's proposal. And you want to read that?
Yes, thank you. Change the format of all county elections to partisan.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I said earlier in the discussion about the sheriff's election, nonpartisan elections are confusing to voters. There's research out there, not a ton of it, but there is research out there that shows that in a nonpartisan election, voters look to something that they can identify with if there's no party, whether that be a name, whether that be something that that person does. It's just hard for voters to get their head around somebody that doesn't have a party affiliation. Rather than hiding behind an RRD, it seems to be the other way around, where a person's not making a stand one way or the other on an issue. Research also shows that nonpartisan elections produce elected officials that are more representative of the upper socioeconomic strata than of the general populace, and they don't reflect the demographics of the people they represent. We can look at the Board of County Commissioners and see that. There's not a single minority on that commission that I'm aware of. Chairman Eilert, in his comments to this commission, said he felt elected positions that enact policy should be elected on a partisan basis. I don't know if he meant to include himself in that, but that's what he said. You can go back and look at the video, and that's a direct quote from him. Lastly, a nonpartisan election, the replacement process is confusing. There is no precinct committee people to make that decision, to get together and come together and figure out who's going to fill that vacancy. With a nonpartisan election, you're stuck with a special election, which some of the charter commissioners in here have complained is a costly event, and that's true. But that's how you solve things like that, other than having that governing body basically be a self-appointing oligarchy, and they pick the person that they want, and it's not necessarily representative of what the citizens of the county want. And I'll stand for any questions.
I can't remember how we did it before. We probably ought to go ahead and move that and get a second, and then we'll have our discussion so that Commissioner Russell doesn't have to correct me. Kyle, I'm kidding, of course. Would you like to move that, Commissioner Smith?
Yeah.
Move to change the format of all county elections to partisan. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Denning. Okay, other discussion? Anybody in the room? Commissioner Brownlee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was a legislator on the committee that created the charter in 1999, and that was in the era of Dick Bond, who served then as the Senate president. Certainly, Jan Myers had served this area well in Congress, and both of them well-known Republicans that saw things differently than I did, but their words at the time were that they had wanted these races to continue to be partisan. And I remember that very clearly. And they both were very disappointed that that commission moved these races to nonpartisan races. And I can say, as a legislator at that time, that was not the intent. We intended for these races, for the county commission races, to continue to be partisan.
Thank you. Other comments in the room? How about on Zoom? I see no hands up on Zoom. We'll going once, twice. Any further comments on Commissioner Smith's proposal to change the format of all county elections to partisan? If not, we'll move on to a roll call.
Judge Zach Thomas would move for that roll call.
Well, we'll just if there's no other discussion, Deputy Clerk Sater, call the roll, please.
Wendy Bingesser.
Wendy Bingesser, yes.
That's a yes. Mike Boehm. That's a no. Karen Brownlee.
Yes.
That's a yes. Vicky Charlesworth.
No.
That's a no. Jim Denning. That's a yes. Jane Dirks.
Yes.
That's a yes. Jimmy Gaona. That's a no. Tedrick House.
No.
That's a no. Randy Hutchins.
Yes.
That's a yes. Chris Isla.
No.
That's a no. Laura Klingensmith.
Yes.
That's a yes. Joy Costin.
No. Joy Costin.
That's a no. Brent McCune. That's a no. Eric Michelson.
No.
That's a no. Ed Peterson. That's a no. Don Rutan.
No.
That's a no. Leslie Riverella. Leslie, are you there?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes,
Leslie Riverola is a no.
that's a no. Don Roberts.
Don Roberts, yes.
That's a yes. Kyle Russell.
Kyle Russell, no.
That's a no. Paula Swak.
No.
That's a no. Brenda Sharp.
Brenda Sharp, yes.
That's
I mean,
a
I'm
yes.
sorry, no. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was a no. My apologies.
Brenda Sharp is a no. Greg Shelton.
Greg Shelton, no.
That's a no. Greg Smith.
Yes.
That is a yes. Zach Thomas.
Zach Thomas, no.
That's a no. Greg, Chairman Musil.
No.
That's a no. And I have 8 yeses and 17 nos. It does not pass on to the second reading.
Okay, the final item we have for first reading then is the additional amendments proposed by Mayor Schwak on the heels of, that included the nonpartisan election of sheriff. I think, as I understand it, Mayor, you generally intended this as a cleanup amendment, given that we had failed to advance the proposal to change the county clerk, register of deeds, and county treasurer to elected. So this would clean up the charter commission and delete those 3 positions under section 5.05 elected county officials and include them in 502 as appointed positions. That's part of the purpose of your amendment, right? You and I had talked about the fact, Council Dunham has indicated that those 3 bullet points under 5.05 incorporate the statutory duties of those positions, but those positions are not identified by name within the county structure now. So it is her recommendation, and I agree with it, that those should be retained. And I talked to you earlier about if we moved those 3, gosh, we have to have a ballot amendment to move those within the charter so that they're not under elected officials. Now, each of them say the position shall be appointed, not elected, but they're under a section that doesn't kind of make sense there. But would you continue to propose that we have a ballot election to move them, or simply accept the language as stated currently?
If nothing else were to change, that is, if voting on a nonpartisan basis were to fail at the second reading, then I would drop all of these cleanup changes.
Okay.
I don't see a point in expending the funds on an election just to clean up the language. Although sincerely, I believe this document ought to be restated in full.
I don't disagree that it wasn't designed for what happens after adoption. And then under the county sheriff and district attorney, you have added or included there that, well, the sheriff shall be elected by a popular vote in the nonpartisan election. That's moved on to second reading, but not determined. The language after that is, as I understand it, currently in state statute, that the Board of County Commissioners reviews and approves the sheriff's budget, and that the sheriff is bound by the administrative policies adopted by the Board of County Commissioners. Is that true? Ms.
Yes,
Dunham?
it's found in KSA 19-801. A deals with elected for 4 years. C deals with submitting the budget, is required to submit the budget to the Board of County Commissioners for their approval. 19805D requires that personnel actions of the sheriff are subject to the personnel policies and procedures established by the commissioners, and the county human relations pay plan applies.
Okay, and your purpose then for including them in the charter when they're already in the statute is what?
Clarification as to who does what.
But so you don't disagree that they're already required by statute?
I don't disagree, but we heard at the public hearings that a lot of our constituents or the county's constituents were confused about what is the role between the county commissioners and the sheriff. We had people testify that it would be inappropriate for the Board of County Commissioners to review the budget of the sheriff, but they're required by law to do so.
And then with respect to the district attorney, again, you add that clarify that the district attorney is not a county official, but an elected state position. And that's really the only change that the district attorney shall comply with administrative policies adopted by the commission to the extent not inconsistent with law. That is already language in the charter.
Exactly. And again, it's just to clarify for the public why the district attorney is treated differently.
Okay. Do you want to move then those proposals, understanding that the nonpartisan portion is going to be handled by a separate second reading, but the rest of those, do you want at this point to move those? I don't think we can wait to see if something goes on the ballot to clean it up, because we won't know that until the 13th or the 22nd, or maybe the first meeting in January.
Assuming that the nonpartisan issue moves to a second reading, I would propose this language. If you want me to propose it right now so that you have a head count, I'm happy to do that too.
I think we need to figure out if the rest of that goes to second
Okay.
reading or not.
Then I propose the specific language, which is before the commissioners now for adoption with regard to sections 502 and 505.
So long as you're moving it, which gives it the opportunity with 9 votes to go to a second reading, which gives it the opportunity to go on the ballot. Do you want to include moving those 3 bullet points you deleted up under
Yes.
5.02?
I would adopt the suggestion of Ms. Dunham and move those, that language about the statutory duties to 502 where it belongs.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Commissioner Peterson. So the proposal then for our discussion is to move the 3 deleted bullet points to keep them in, but move them up to within 5.02. And then have the additions to the county sheriff and the district attorney provisions toward the last 2 bullet points on the page. Anybody have any specific questions about what we're talking about? If not, is there any discussion about this particular thing? Do you have anything else to add, Mayor Schwak? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, I don't see any need to put in the county charter what's already in state statute. It's redundant. It serves no purpose. Secondly, the statute that's being referenced, 19-805, that has to do with deputies, under sheriffs, duties, et cetera, talks specifically about personnel action that the sheriff can take. That's what these things take place. The BOCC does not have anything to do with personnel action. That's specifically exempted in certain cases. They can't tell him who to hire. They can't tell him who to fire, so on and so forth. And lastly, the amendment says that it has to be something that's passed by the BOCC. There are several policies that are not passed by the BOCC. They're simply stipulated by the county manager, and those are not applicable to the sheriff. They are not county resolutions. They haven't been passed by an elected body. An appointed official does not have authority over an elected official, and there's plenty of case law to support that.
Thank you. Other comments? Anybody on Zoom with comments on this proposal?
Chairman Musil, this is Brenda Sharp.
Yes,
I
Commissioner.
just wanted to express my thanks to Commissioner Schwak, Mayor Schwak, for her diligence in reviewing these documents and in her attempts to get them cleaned up and moving forward in the future. I plan to vote yes. Thank you.
Mayor Bain.
I have 3 proposals in front of me with Mayor Schwartz's name on it. And the way these have been sent out in random orders, I don't know where this partisan, nonpartisan sheet goes. I have a proposed amendment that refers to some of the things we're talking about, but I don't have anything that shows deletions on this particular page. And I have another one over here that says delete 208, which we haven't talked about, and 603. So, and I have this one.
Yeah.
Again, I think that these are, for the most part, cleanup. I would not support them moving forward unless there's another item. I'm confused at the moment. I don't know what the unintended consequences are if I vote to move this forward. Commissioner Smith brings up a few things that I don't know if it's clear in here or not. If it's in statute, do we need to repeat it? If there are things that currently the commission doesn't have oversight of, I don't want them to slip in because I don't know what I'm voting for.
Well,
So
I will tell you that
short of tabling this and getting this put into one thing that made sense, I'm going to vote no because I don't know what I'm getting into.
I am not proposing tonight, and I don't think Mayor Schwak has, any of the changes in Article 2, which would be pure cleanups because we now have an adopted charter, and that, I think the Article 2 items were anticipating whether or not something would be done. All we're talking about tonight is the changes to 5.02 and 5.05, which are on the blue lined 1-page sheet that was sent out, I think, on Friday.
And are we going to talk about section 603 that also came from Paulo, or is that something else? Is that being addressed
This
right
is,
now?
that is something else. We're talking about 5.02 and 5.05.
No, I have more paper than I know what to do with because it's coming out in multiple places and you changed the order from where we started and I don't know where I am half the time.
Okay. Well, I apologize for that. We had asked, or I had asked people that were proposing a first reading or moving on to second reading to try to be more specific. Mayor Schwak had described what she was doing and I had a red line created instead of trying to simply have it described so that we could show it. And that shows several additions to 5.02. It deletes county clerk, register of deeds, and county treasurer in 505, which the proposal now is to move those, keep those on the recommendation of Council Dunham, but move those up into 5.02 rather than have them in a section titled elected county officials. So that elected county officials section 5.05 would only refer to the county sheriff and the district attorney and would do what is described there, which is to approve the budget by the BOCC and to make both of those offices subject to personnel policies and administrative policies of the Board of County Commissioners. And I don't disagree that there's still some confusion about that, as Commissioner Smith pointed out. I don't think we've let confusion in a reasonable sense stop us at the first reading stage. I think it's very important that we don't have confusion when we get to the second reading stage. So does that help at all?
So this blue line version is correct, or the fact it already has nonpartisan in it.
That the first line of county sheriff bullet point will be determined based on the other item that we moved to second reading tonight. I haven't figured out a cleaner way to do this, and I hope that Commissioner Peters, are you done, Mike?
Yes.
Commissioner Peters.
I support the intent behind this. However, I think we may need additional legal work on this issue as well. For example, although the commission currently approves the sheriff's budget, and I believe that this states the current status where the sheriff does follow certain personnel policies and procedures. There are certain things established by law, and if the voters vote for this particular language, I think it raises a question of whether they have tried to impose a charter, approve a charter that may not necessarily accurately reflect existing law. And so I think we need a little clarification before we actually put this forward. I'm going to support this tonight to move it on to second reading because I support the intent of it.
Here's what I would say. We have voted on things at first reading that were conceptual. And I think this is conceptual. What Mayor Schwak is trying to do is put the three positions take them out of the elected positions since they are not elected now, put them under 5.02 and make it clear that what is already in statute with respect to the sheriff's budget and the personnel and administrative policies applicable to the sheriff and the district attorney. I do agree that before second reading, we would need some clarification as to whether those are imposing duties outside of the statutes. I'm not comfortable with putting a bunch of stuff in and just saying not inconsistent with law. I'd rather have a legal opinion than tell us whether or not we should do that at all. But I think we do that before second reading. My personal opinion is that I think these are in statute, and so I don't know why we would need to put them in a home rule charter amendment, and so I will not be supporting the proposal. Any other comments?
One more, sure.
Go ahead, Commissioner Smith.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I neglected to talk about the district attorney part of the amendment. I'm not so sure that this doesn't violate KSA 19-101A, which says what a charter county can and cannot do. 19-101A 8. Counties may not exempt from or affect changes in statutes made non-uniform in application solely by reason of authorizing exceptions for counties having adopted a charter for county government. which is exactly what this sounds like. We're trying to mess with the DA simply because we have a charter government. Not only that, we're the only county with a charter government. Wichita or Sedgwick County has tried to do that, and they can't because the statute says that their county charter commission has to be made up of Johnson counties, because that's how the statute reads right now. They're trying to change that so that they can get Sedgwick people on their county commission. So, and I'm not so sure it's not an overreach.
Could Commissioner explain exactly what part of it is an overreach? Because this is language already in the charter, except for the fact that the only language here that's not in the charter is that which says, while the district attorney of the 10th Judicial District is not a county official, the rest of that language is in the current charter.
The last bullet point is what's in there now, which says the offices of the elected county sheriff and district attorney shall comply with the administrative policies adopted by the commission to the extent not inconsistent with law. That's in the current charter. You have deleted that and put certain requirements under each of the positions, as how I understand it, Mayor Schwag.
Yes.
Okay. There are no other comments. Anybody on Zoom?
Chairman,
Yes, Mayor.
just quickly, I'll be voting in support, but the concept of a cleanup amendment, generally, if a substantive amendment is put to the voters, I think it makes sense to do that only in that context. So that's why I'll be advancing this contingently with my vote, or I'll be voting for advancement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I know the mayor will have to leave us shortly because he has a council meeting starting at 6. There are no other comments. Deputy Clerk Sater, would you read the roll, call the roll for vote?
Wendy Bingesser.
No.
That's a no. Mike Boehm.
Mike Bank, no.
That's a no. Karen Brownlee.
Brownlee, no.
That's a no. Vicky Charlesworth.
Yes.
That's a yes. Jim Denning. That's a no. Jane Dirks.
No.
That's a no. Jimmy Gaona. That's a yes. Tedrick Hausch.
Yes.
That's a yes. Randy Hutchins.
No.
That's a no. Chris Iliff.
Yes.
That's a yes. Laura Klingensmith.
No.
That's a no. Joy Costin.
Yes.
That's a yes. Brent McCune. That's a no. Eric Michelson.
Yes.
That's a yes. Ed Peterson. That's a yes. Don Rattan.
Yes.
That's a yes. Leslie Riverola. Leslie.
Leslie Riverola, yes.
That's a yes. Don Roberts.
Don Roberts, no.
That's a no. Kyle Russell.
Yes.
That's a yes. Paula Schwak.
Yes.
That's a yes. Brenda Sharp.
Brenda Sharp, yes.
That's a yes. Greg Shelton.
Greg Shelton, yes.
That's a yes. Greg Smith.
No.
That's a no. Zach Thomas.
Zach Thomas, yes.
That's a yes. Chair Musel.
No.
That's a no. Chair, I have 14 yeses and 11 noes. It moves on to a second reading.
Agreed. Given the sense of the body that we would not address cleanup amendments until and unless some substantive amendment gets 13 votes to be on the ballot, I believe we have completed all of our first readings and are ready to move into second readings. Again, the second reading is required for anything that received 9 votes. If we discuss it We will not vote that meeting. We will vote the following meeting. The second reading items we have, the first one in your agenda for today was the establishment of the Johnson County Unincorporated Trustee. We need to hold that one for the legal opinion. The next one is the Board of County Commissioners, and that all vacancies on the Board of County Commissioners should be filled by special election unless the next scheduled election is within 90 days of the position becoming vacant. That was proposed by Commissioner Smith. We have basically 19 minutes to discuss that. I'd like to go ahead and start it. If we don't finish the discussion, we'll continue it in our next meeting. We will not vote until the following meeting in any event. The meeting following the conclusion of discussion. So if we conclude discussion today, we could vote on this one next meeting on the 13th. Go ahead, Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't really have much to add from the last time. Again, the fact that we're in a nonpartisan situation here, at least right now, we've lost the mechanism to make the appointments to a vacancy. Granted, they don't happen very often. I was able to find one time in recent history that it happened. But it's troubling to me that somebody is appointed by the very elected body. They're filling a vacancy and they're appointed by the very elected body that they're filling that position in. And then there's no mechanism to check that later on until the next election. There's no special election held to verify. I mean, even in the Kansas legislature, if someone is appointed to the position the very next year, they have to stand for election. Whereas I don't think that's the case with a county commissioner. If they're appointed 2.5 years of the term left, then they stay there that 2.5 years until the very next election cycle. There's no way for the public to weigh in on it. This just provides that check and balance to where the public can weigh in.
It might be helpful, perhaps, Cindy, I hate to put you on the spot, but because Commissioner Smith has pointed out, the resolution adopted by the Board of County Commissioners to fill vacancies is lengthy. But it generally provides that you will stand for election at the next even numbered election, but there is an opportunity if it's late in year 2 that the vacancy occurs, it might be too late for to hold an election that 2nd November. So you're in your first 2 years. We have a vacancy in August. It's too late to have an election for November, so you could then serve for 2 years plus some number of months or not 60 or 90 days, right? But you would never serve for more than 2 years and a couple months before you'd stand for election. Is that generally the case?
I'm trying to think of any other hypotheticals. I agree with your description, but I can't see how it would be longer than that 2 years and whatever, 3 months or something.
And Greg, when you say the next scheduled election, because we're going to have this issue with Mayor Michelson's thing about county elected positions are described in the Constitution generally and in statutes for being on even numbered years. So the next even numbered county election, if you're
Well, the intent was the next election that's coming up regardless.
Okay.
Not necessarily an even numbered year.
Okay. So this,
I mean, it wouldn't affect the whole county. It would only affect that district.
Right. Okay. I think we had circulated everybody information from the election commissioner about special elections. But so now that we have municipal elections the odd numbered years and county elections and state offices every even numbered year, there could be an election every year unless the vacancy occurred within 90 days of the primary date, right?
Correct.
What happens if it's the 89th day? How are vacancies filled? Would they then revert to the county policy? I hadn't really thought about this until tonight, but it's the 89th day before the August primary and Commissioner Musil's hit by a bus. So we're too close to have somebody for that election. How do we fill that position? Would it just revert to the existing mechanism?
So you're talking it's the day before the primary this happens?
Well, the 89th day before, because we're within 90 days.
89 days.
We're closer than 90 days to the election.
Yeah, then it's not 90 days, so.
It would revert to the Board of County Commission policy. Okay. But it would be every year. And I think that's an important distinction as opposed to every 2 years. So right now you could be 2 years and 60 days in office before you face the voters. In this situation, you could be no more than 1 year and 89 days. I think, if my math's right. Okay. And again, we'll discuss this tonight. When we come back on the 13th, if we conclude discussion tonight, the anticipation would be we would simply vote on it. There wouldn't be more discussion. The time period would be for you to reflect on it individually as commissioners. Okay. So any comments tonight from members of the commission in the room? Mayor Schwak?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, could you please just recap the current options versus what is being proposed?
Well, as I understand it, and Greg, correct me, is that if any vacancy occurs on the Board of County Commissioners, resignation, death, whatever, and it's more than 90 days before the August election, August primary, there would need to be an election at that August primary to replace that person. And based on our earlier vote tonight, it would be a nonpartisan primary. So if there are more than 2 candidates, there would be a primary. And then the replacement would be elected in November. And I guess during that period of time, between the vacancy and that election, there would be no commissioner. Is that
correct?
Okay. Currently, if there's a vacancy, the Board of County Commissioners fills it, and the person they choose stands for election at the next even numbered election, unless again, we're too close to that election for them to be placed on the ballot with opposition in a primary. Does that make sense? I think that's fairly described. Commissioner Peterson?
So would there not,
Can you use the microphone, Ed?
would there not be any special elections? All of these replacements then would occur at the next regularly scheduled election? Am I missing something?
Oh, by including the word special, should we take out the word special and just say,
Yeah,
well,
we
next
can
scheduled
take
election?
that out. That was the biggest objection, I think, to the
Okay.
whole thing.
So it would be an August, November election, but it could be every year,
Right,
not just even numbered.
correct. Not necessarily the next county scheduled election, just the next election coming.
Cindy, given that the Constitution and the statutes, in your opinion, at least lead to the conclusion that county elected positions need to be in even numbered years, do we need to get an opinion on this? As to whether we could do it in odd numbered years?
I think you'd want to get an opinion, but you would be still filling it for the regular term, which is based on even years. You're just doing it, as I understand it, just if the next election is coming up, I think that's what you're saying, like this year.
Right.
If there'd been a vacancy, let's say earlier this year, then it would come up this year, but the term wouldn't change. So you wouldn't be altering the term. You would be filling a vacancy. So, again, you'd want your legal counsel to look at that, but it would not be as problematic as permanently changing to an odd year.
Okay, well, I think we can finish the discussion tonight and put that on the issue for legal counsel. Now, we've got 1 week until next week. If we don't have a decision, then we're not going to vote on it. If we don't have an opinion, we won't vote on it.
Well, I think the one thing with this, Mr. Chairman, that's different than changing the term is there's precedent for this already at the state level. It's how it's done with the legislature. They don't get to sit until the next scheduled election for that position. They're just filling the term, and then they actually have to stand for a special election in their district to keep the seat.
Do they stand for a special election in odd numbered years?
Whenever it is. I mean, that's just how it works.
Okay. All right, I don't want to confuse this more, but let's conclude discussion tonight on this proposal. Anybody on
Chairman.
Zoom?
Yeah, Chairman, this is Joy Coaston. I'm not sure that that's the case. If somebody is, if somebody is, if somebody leaves the legislature, they are then appointed by precinct people and they serve the term until such time that the election cycle catches up with them. Is that not correct?
Not in the Senate.
Not in the Senate. So in the Senate, it's different than in the House.
Yep, I think that's right, Mr. Chair. The Senate has to stand for election in every 2 years if it's if it's a replacement, even if it's in the middle of the term. The House fills the entire 2-year term. I'm 90% sure that's true.
But in both cases, they fill out the rest of that 2 years, but the
Right.
Senate is a 4-year term, so they have to stand in the middle of their term
Right.
for
Right.
election.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Mayor Bain?
I don't see a need for this. Again, things are working as they are. It's rarely used. I'll speak from personal experience, Lenexa. In my 19 years, I have appointed people that have served a full 4-year term because the person that was elected on Tuesday passed away the Sunday before. Oddly enough, no one wrote in 5 names, so the person passed away. The mayor appointed, the council confirmed, which I think is probably what the commission does right now. That person has stood for reelection 4 times and won every time. I've also appointed folks that were April to August and they lost. The voters get a chance to vote within, it's odd, but 2 years in most cases, usually less than that. And the record is most of the time they're reappointed, but it is a short-term window. I don't have a problem with trusting our elected body to select someone for a short period of time until the next election is available, the next county, an even year election is available.
Somebody else on Zoom, I think I cut you off. I'm sorry. Is there someone else on Zoom that would like to address this?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Hutchins.
Randy Hutchins. I think we got a live example of potentially what could happen in the event somebody wouldn't resign. So I think in the city of Spring Hill, it's been very controversial that an individual got elected as mayor and resigned before he took office. And so and there's a lot of speculation of what's going on. I think it would be advantageous for us to try to avoid a similar situation. And I would support what Commissioner is putting forth.
Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Mr.
Jimmy
Gaona.
Gaona here.
Close.
You look close. You're getting there by the end of this year. I just kind of, and for clarification's sake, is there or tell me the difference, if anyone could, between what they do in the state house versus the Johnson County Commission?
The
If any.
state, because state house representative members are elected on a partisan basis. If there's a vacancy, the precinct committee people of that party have a convention and pick a successor who would then stand for election at the next even numbered election.
So for clarification, it's the same amount of time with everything's similar with the exception of who gets to pick the person.
Correct. I think that's right.
No.
Yeah.
State senator or state senators serve 4 years.
I said,
Representatives serve
I'm
2
speaking of the
years.
House.
Yeah, he mentioned the House. So
Okay.
in the House or in the Senate too, if you're picked as a replacement, you're going to stand at the next November even numbered election. Right?
So the most either side could go is 2 years.
No, because if you're a senator and that person dies in office in their first year, there's an appointment made by precinct committee people, but then the next election, not the next scheduled Senate election, the next election, they have to stand to retain that seat.
And
Then
that's-
they hold it until it's time to be elected.
And that's for the Senate. Is the House the same?
Well, the House is elected every 2 years.
Okay.
So let me run through it, see if I can walk through it. Somebody's elected to the Senate in November of a year. They take office in January year 1. They get hit by a bus in February of year 1. The precinct committee people of their party pick a successor in March. They then serve through that year until this year 2 November. Even though they had a 4-year term, they have to run at the
Right.
2-year term in November
Right.
of year 2. They don't stand for election in November of year 1,
Correct.
right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Right, right.
it's 2 years. And in the House, if the House member is hit by a bus in February and replaced in March, they will also serve out 18 months to the even number November.
Correct.
Okay?
Right.
Kyle's got his hand on his head like. All right, any other comments? I'm going to try to save my comments on all of these to the end. I won't support this at second reading to put on the ballot. I think we've had an example once in 20 years of this happening. Basically, what we're doing is potentially saving, instead of 1 year and 90 days before you face the voters, it would be 2 years and 90 days, roughly. So either way, if you're appointed, you're going to face the voters in a relatively short period of time. That's how I think all of the cities in Johnson County do it. That's how Johnson County Community College Board of Trustees does it. And I don't think there have been examples of abuses where that hasn't worked well. So at the next meeting, yeah, Mayor Boehm.
Clarification, in Lenexa, we appoint to the term elected, not to the next election.
Okay.
I'm not sure all cities do it that way. There's a variety.
There are no other discussion on this point. Be prepared at the December 13th meeting to vote on the second reading. All vacancies on the Board of County Commissioners shall be filled by election unless the next, why don't we say be filled at the next scheduled election, unless the next scheduled election is within 90 days of the position coming. So instead of special election, we'll call it a scheduled election.
Right.
So you're not asking for an election just on that.
No, just because, I mean, there's going to be
Okay.
one for something.
Right. Okay. That will be our first second reading vote then on the 13th. We will move then to discussion on the second reading of the Public Health Advisory Board. And then to the Board of County Commissioners items. One is to appoint that the county manager shall appoint or hire, with the majority approval of the Board of County Commissioners, the non-elected director of departments. I'm summarizing these from the agenda. We will also discuss at second reading, deleting or addressing the compensation issue for Board of County Commission members. And we will also move to second reading we need a legal opinion on the 5-year term. If we have that, we'll discuss it. If not, it will be deferred as with the unincorporated trustee. If we have additional time, then we will move to the second reading on the items that were advanced tonight, which were to change the election status of the sheriff to a nonpartisan race, which advanced 13 to 12. Oh, advanced with 12 yes votes and 13 no votes. And we will discuss at second reading Mayor Schwach's changes to 5.02 and 5.05, which advanced with 14 votes. It is 5:59. I believe we are ready to adjourn for tonight. Again, we have meetings on the 13th and 22nd. I would urge us all to move toward votes on the second reading so that we can have those resolved in calendar year 2021. And we can all celebrate Christmas or other holiday items without the stress of the Charter Commission at that point. Is there a motion to adjourn?
And Chair, first, the next meeting on next Monday, the 13th, is here at the KU Edwards campus again, plus availability of Zoom.
Dress warmly. Is there a motion to adjourn? Commissioner Brownlee moves and Commissioner Gaona seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your service.